3,000 years ago in ancient Jerusalem, the young King Solomon was forced to put his wisdom to the ultimate test.
And the king said, "Bring me a sword." And they brought a sword before the king. And the king said, "Divide the living child in two, and give half to the one and half to the other." 1 Kings 3:24.
According to the Hebrew Bible, Solomon would become one of ancient Israel's mightiest kings, gifted with powers beyond those of mortal men.
He can see into the human heart. He knows how to pose a question so that he gets a truthful answer. And this is what is the source of his fabled wisdom.
Under King Solomon's rule, the sacred Ark of the Covenant, said to contain the 10 Commandments, was brought to rest in his holy temple in Jerusalem. Guided by Solomon's wisdom, the nation of Israel experienced an era of peace and tranquility never before known. Why then does this legendary king have such harsh critics?
The great mystery about Solomon is how somebody endowed with such wisdom and such worldly success, yet failed morally in so deep and profound a way as a king.
Solomon is considered by many to be Israel's most enigmatic ruler. How did his duel of wits with the Queen of Sheba spark one of the great love affairs in the Bible? What happened to the Ark of the Covenant when it disappeared from his holy temple? How could a king blessed with divine wisdom be ultimately responsible for the destruction of his own kingdom? These are but a few of the mysteries of the Bible. "3,000 years ago, the Bible tells us, the wisest of all men ruled the kingdom of Israel. The monarch's name was Solomon. The source of his wisdom was said to be divine. He could see into the human heart, and it was said even understand the language of the beasts. According to tradition, this legendary king kept a harem of 1,000 women. The walls of his holy temple were said to be lined with the purest gold. But today, King Solomon's fabled kingdom has crumbled to dust. His very existence has been called into question. The roots of Solomon's legend can be traced back to a pivotal moment in time, to the days when Solomon's father, the warrior King David, lay dying in his palace. David's 17 sons gather at the royal court, all claimants to the throne. Among them is a mere boy, according to Jewish legend, barely 12 years old. His name is Solomon. It is now, as David lies near death, that Solomon's mother, Bathsheba, approaches the frail king's bedside.
And she said unto him, My lord, you swore to your servant by the Lord your God, saying, Your son Solomon shall succeed me as king, and shall sit on my throne. 1 Kings 1:17.
Even though Solomon is not first in line to inherit the throne, David accedes to Bathsheba's wishes. Too sick to rule, David proclaims Solomon king. But many are left wondering, does this youth have the knowledge, let alone the vision, to rule the people of Israel?
One of the problems with having such a pampered young prince, someone almost born with a silver spoon in his mouth, is that he no longer feels the connection with the lives of the people he is to rule.
As the young Solomon confronts the weight of his new responsibilities, one can only imagine the fear and uneasiness that trouble his heart.
His father seemed to be someone who was mature and knew what he was doing and had a path to follow. Whereas Solomon, even though he was already king, felt like a little child.
No sooner does David die than the fledgling King Solomon finds his reign in crisis. While taking advantage of this period of grief and uncertainty, one of Solomon's half-brothers attempts to overthrow the young monarch. Solomon quells the rebellion and condemns his half-brother to death. It is soon afterwards that Solomon journeys to a hilltop named Gibeon, a sanctuary just outside of Jerusalem. Here he dutifully offers a sacrifice to God, never imagining that he is about to experience the defining moment of his life. That night, God appears before Solomon in a dream.
And God said, Ask what I shall give thee. And Solomon said unto God, I am but a little child. I know not how to go out or come in. Give therefore to me, thy servant, an understanding heart to judge thy people, that I may discern between good and bad. 1 Kings 3:9.
Well, this is exactly what God wants to hear. And God says, well, because you could have asked for anything, but you only asked for wisdom, I'm not only going to give you wisdom, I'm going to give you everything else too.
Scholars have speculated about the nature of the extraordinary power God grants to Solomon. Intriguing clues may be found in the book of Jewish oral tradition known as the Talmud.
He woke up and he heard the baying of a donkey and the chirping of a bird, and he understood what they were saying and realized that the dream had not been a dream, but the dream had come true.
Had God endowed Solomon with the transcendent capacity to become one with the universe?
What an unbelievable moment it must have been for Solomon to walk outside and realize that somehow he was in tune with the language of the flowers. He could hear the blades of grass whispering to each other. What secrets do they tell?
As profoundly moving as the legend of Solomon's transformation is, some scholars question whether this incident actually occurred.
Many biblical scholars suspect that the story of Solomon very modestly asking God for wisdom and nothing else is a rather fanciful piece of propaganda written by the court of Solomon to support his being the king.
After this moment, Solomon would claim that his power stemmed from his special relationship with God. It was not unusual for a king to govern by such divine authority, making it very difficult for anyone to oppose his rule. Before long, the young king's wisdom would be put to the test in a baffling legal case. When approached by two women, each claiming the same baby as her own, Solomon is asked to discern the identity of the real mother. How does he arrive at his famous decision? The scene has come down through the ages as one of the most dramatic in the Bible. Two women enter Solomon's court, fighting over a newborn infant. Their voices rise to a fever pitch, each claiming the baby as her own.
And the king said, "Bring me a sword." And they brought a sword before the king. And the king said, "Divide the child in two, and give half to the one, half to the other." 1 Kings 3:25.
One of the most extraordinary qualities of Solomon's wisdom is his ability to discern truth from falsehood. Many have wondered, by what means is he able to do this?
He had enormous confidence in his own gut reaction to people. He listened carefully to their case and responded in a innovative, gut kind of fashion. Challenge the women, push them to the brink, expose them in terms of their emotional profile.
Before the women's startled eyes, the baby is hefted into the air. A razor-sharp sword swings back, about to deal the death blow. Solomon shows no hint of emotion as he orders the soldier to cut the child in two. Suddenly, one of the women lunges forward, crying out for him to stop. She begs Solomon to give the baby to the other woman and spare the child's life.
Solomon knows that mother love is love that lets go, love that would rather see the child well and safe than see personal gratification.
Then the king responded, "Give the first woman the living boy. Do not kill him. She is his mother." 1 Kings 3:27.
While many marvel at Solomon's ingenious solution to the case, there are some who doubt the story's veracity.
It's a wonderful story, but once again, seems like it must have been hatched in the campaign headquarters of Solomon becoming the king, just as much as it could come from an actual decision.
With his wisdom now legendary, Solomon takes up the reins of leadership with commanding authority. In a deft maneuver to expand his power base, he enters into diplomatic alliances with rulers throughout the Middle East.
One of the ways that you sealed relationships with foreign countries is through marriage. So early on, Solomon's number of marriages must have been seen as, look at the great statesman-like accomplishments of this great diplomatic king of ours.
The Bible tells us that Solomon accumulates 700 wives and 300 concubines. Many have asked, are these astonishing numbers an exaggeration?
He probably didn't marry all those women any more than he had all those mountains of gold. There's no doubt whatsoever that the Bible magnifies the accomplishments of some of their royal figures, even at the same time that it criticizes them.
Criticism of Solomon's many affairs is also implicit in biblical accounts, as is his habit of building chapels for his foreign wives, so they can continue to worship their own pagan gods.
It's a ticking bomb. Sooner or later, it's got to go off, and there has to be an indictment of Solomon, because his heart does get led astray by those wives and their idols.
Raising even more questions about Solomon's personal values is the fact that despite his large number of wives, Solomon's offspring are barely mentioned.
This is a man who supposedly had a harem consisting of 1,000 women. Where are all the kids? Where's all the little pitter-patter of thousands of feet around the palace? There's something dead and sterile about his romances. They don't issue in children.
Seemingly unaware of his own disturbing flaws, Solomon embarks on an ambitious building program that will become the talk of the ancient world. By almost every standard, he seems a king at the very peak of his power. And yet, it is now, as Solomon starts to turn his grandiose plans into reality, that some scholars see the seeds of his crushing downfall. The landscape of Israel abounds with archaeological wonders, bearing silent witness to dramatic events which occurred thousands of years ago. Outside of the Hebrew Bible, however, there is little historical evidence that Solomon ever existed, which makes the quest for archaeological clues all the more crucial. Could it be that these ancient stones of Megiddo corroborate the story told in the Old Testament of Solomon's flourishing kingdom?
Was Solomon a real figure? Those questions are very difficult to answer. I think, on the basis of what I know about the archaeological remains of the period, if we didn't have Solomon, we'd have to invent somebody and we could name him Solomon.
According to the Hebrew Bible, Solomon builds fortifications throughout Israel, where he can provision his armies and guard strategic trade routes. But it is in the glittering capital city of Jerusalem where he embarks on his most ambitious project, an extravagant palace that contains within it the Holy Temple.
And he built the inner court with 3 rows of hewed stone and a row of cedar beams. And he carved thereon cherubim and palm trees and open flowers, and covered them with gold. 1 Kings 6:36.
Inside the temple, in an inner sanctum called the Holy of Holies, Solomon places the Ark of the Covenant. According to tradition, the Ark was believed to contain within it the 10 Commandments presented to Moses on Mount Sinai.
When Solomon put the Ark into the temple, it endowed the entire temple with the sort of divine authority and divine majesty that made it recognized among all the people as the center of Jewish worship and Jewish religious life and the Jewish connection to God.
Solomon succeeds in making his dream come true, a temple for the Lord in the holy city. Under his reign, the grandeur and opulence of Jerusalem would become legendary. But what remains of Solomon's grand legacy in our own time? To this day, beneath the age-old streets of Jerusalem, not one shred of evidence has been unearthed to support the existence of either Solomon's palace or temple. The Ark of the Covenant, the holiest icon of the Jewish people, has also vanished. Experts have naturally wondered why. Archaeologists believe that the mysterious disappearance of evidence that Solomon lived may have had something to do with the turbulent character of Jerusalem itself. For much of its long history, Jerusalem has been a holy city for three major religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. To this day, the city remains a battleground to the faithful and fanatical. Sites such as that of Solomon's Holy Temple are forbidden to the probing shovels of archaeologists. We may never know what secrets lie buried beneath this sacred soil. Assuming, however, that what the Bible tells us is true, and Solomon did transform his kingdom with an amazing amount of construction, what would be the verdict of history?
If we take Solomon's story at face value, we might come away thinking this is a real golden age. This is a Camelot. Everything is hunky-dory.
And yet, beneath the surface of Solomon's achievements lay a darker truth. For while he may have turned his dreams into reality, they were realized at a terrible price.
Solomon even went so far as to conscript labor and take people away from their farms and destroy village life so that he could get these massive building projects off the ground. The people suffered horribly under Solomon. Yes, they had beautiful buildings, but they had whip marks on their backs to show for it.
Oppressive taxes and forced labor, these were the policies of Solomon's administration. Despite all the trappings of outward glory, some experts have come to wonder how Solomon, this wisest of all kings, lost his way.
There's no doubt about the fact that Solomon plants the seeds of his own destruction by oppressive rulership of his own people. This is the downfall, of course, of all dictators. And that is, their glories come at a price, a human price, that they forget to honor and pay back.
Now, as Solomon approaches the middle years of his life, there is about him a sense of longing and dissatisfaction.
You can see that same kind of psychological process in many men today who build a career, do very well materially, but can't seem to find peace or happiness or joy in their lives.
It is now that one of the most alluring figures in the Bible enters Solomon's life, none other than the Queen of Sheba. For years, the mighty King Solomon has surely heard whisperings of a lush and prosperous land called Sheba, lying far to the south of Egypt. The kingdom is ruled by a shrewd and powerful queen who has made her nation prosper by cultivating an aromatic plant used as incense. Although the primary source of Sheba's encounter with Solomon comes to us from the Bible, so many corresponding tales of their liaison have been passed down by other cultures that many experts believe Sheba to be an historical figure. If so, where was her fabled kingdom?
There are a number of good possibilities. One is that Sheba is really another name or another term for a well-known place called Saba, which is in South Arabia. However, there's also a kind of Ethiopian connection to Sheba.
We know that there are many references in the Bible to the kingdom of Cush, of what we call today Ethiopia. We know that it was a flourishing kingdom. So it's not outside of the possibility that a dignitary, a female dignitary from the kingdom of Cush would have come on diplomatic visits that would have included Jerusalem.
Many scholars have wondered if the Queen of Sheba did come from Ethiopia. Was she of African descent?
Some people think she might have been quite dark-skinned. She might have been African. But even if she was from Arabia, she was also dark.
According to Ethiopian legend, Solomon sends the queen a message attached to the wings of a bird.
He simply cannot stand the idea of anyone out there ruling independently who has not acknowledged him to be superior.
In the letter, Solomon orders Sheba to appear before him. He tells her that the trip to Jerusalem should take 7 years. Despite the potential dangers of such a journey, Sheba seems drawn to him by destiny.
When the Queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon, fame due to the name of the Lord, she came to test him with riddles. 1 Kings 10:1.
In the Ethiopian legend, Sheba sets out by camel caravan, crossing 3,000 miles of burning desert. Meanwhile, Solomon has heard strangely unsettling rumors about the queen. It is whispered that Sheba may be part demon. As a result of her pact with the spirits of darkness, she may not have the legs and feet of an ordinary woman, but may possess the hooves of a goat. Nervously anticipating her arrival in Jerusalem, Solomon devises a scheme that will force Sheba to reveal her alleged demon's feet. He installs a pool of water in his throne room, filling it with fish and covering it with a sheet of glass. When Sheba arrives sooner than expected, Solomon is caught off guard as her entourage approaches the palace gates. As she makes her way towards his throne room, the king carefully observes her every move. She hesitates at the perimeter of the pool. As she lifts her skirts, her ankles are revealed. To his relief, Solomon sees that Sheba is human after all.
They spent days, apparently, just challenging each other with riddles. His riddles seem to be designed to show off his knowledge of the natural world. Her riddles seem to be more seductive and more personal.
Legend tells us that Solomon is intensely drawn to Sheba.
The minute Solomon sees her, he wants her. But she's extremely virtuous, so in some of the legends he actually sets out to seduce her because he understands he cannot have her any other way.
Some experts even believe that Solomon may have written the Song of Songs, a series of erotic poems that appear in the Bible to express his desire for the queen.
You have ravished my heart, my sister, my bride. You have ravished my heart with a glance of your eyes. Song of Songs 4:9.
Some of the verses of the Song of Songs have been thought to be about the Queen of Sheba, especially those verses that say, "I'm dark but beautiful, O daughters of Jerusalem."
Scholars have wondered if indeed Sheba was of a darker skin color than Solomon. How would this difference have been viewed?
There would have been no sense of this is an interracial affair. That is, they would have hated it because she was foreign, but that has nothing to do with her skin color.
The Bible is aware of differences in skin color, but there is not attached to that difference any kind of moral judgment. There's no judgment passed on people because of their physical features.
Perhaps then, if racial prejudice was not a problem in the ancient world, then the obvious differences between Solomon and Sheba would have been viewed as a source of attraction.
That would be hard to sort out from a lot of the other bases of attraction that the Bible seems to point out. I mean, Solomon's displaying all of this wealth, this great panache and wisdom. Was skin tone also an aspect of the attraction? Well, maybe. It's certainly not outside the realm of possibility.
After 6 months in Solomon's court, Sheba decides it is time to return home. Solomon, in an uncharacteristic display of emotion, begs her to stay for just one more day. Sheba agrees. Be it raw physical attraction or perhaps even love, powerful forces seem to be driving these two strong personalities ever closer together. It is 10 centuries before the birth of Jesus. According to legend, the Queen of Sheba has been a guest in Solomon's court for 6 months.
And King Solomon gave unto the Queen of Sheba all her desire, whatsoever she asked, beside that which Solomon gave her of his royal bounty. 1 Kings 10:13.
As Sheba prepares to return to her homeland, Solomon oversees the preparation of a farewell feast. For some inexplicable reason, he tells his servants to add powerful spices to the food. Eyeing each other over the long banquet table, they linger, knowing this is the last meal they will ever share together. Finally, when the candles have burned low, Solomon suggests that she spend the night in his palace.
And she said, well, I'm not comfortable staying. I'm afraid that you're going to try to seduce me. And he said, well, no, I promise I won't take anything from you if you promise not to take anything of mine.
Solomon arranges a chamber where there are 2 beds and wishes her good night. Sheba awakens in the middle of the night with an intense thirst from the spicy meal. Solomon watches her from the other bed. Though it is only a mouthful of water, she has indeed taken something that belongs to him. Announcing that she has broken her promise, he slips into her bed. Their passion, held in check for so long, is finally released. Solomon and the Queen of Sheba share hours of joyful lovemaking. Later, as he falls asleep, Solomon has an ominous dream.
He dreams that the sun has departed from Jerusalem forever, and it never comes back. He waits and waits and it never comes back. And my sense is that that's his feeling about her leaving, that the warmth is really going out of his life.
Sheba awakens in the morning, ready to depart for home. Solomon places a signet ring on her finger, a token of his affection. Reluctantly, he watches the queen as she sets off on her homeward journey. What neither Sheba nor Solomon know is that she is pregnant with Solomon's child. Legend tells us that 9 months after leaving the kingdom of Israel, a son is born to the Queen of Sheba. She names him Menelik. After an arduous journey, mother and son reach their home in Ethiopia. Historians have wondered whether Sheba's liaison with King Solomon is responsible for the existence of the Jewish population now living in Ethiopia.
When Sheba returned to Africa or Arabia, she went with many gifts. So she may well have been bringing courtiers, maidservants, nannies, tutors, all kinds of people back with her. And these, as well as her own encounter with Solomon, could be the origin of Ethiopian Jews.
As her son Menelik grows up, Sheba frequently recounts stories of his mighty father and the land he rules far to the north. And yet in her heart she knows that she will never set eyes on Solomon again. When the boy turns 13, Sheba tells him to go to Jerusalem to meet his father.
When he says, "How will I know my father?" she holds up the mirror and she says, "He looks just like this, you, my son. He looks just like you."
As Menelik sets off for Jerusalem, Sheba entrusts him with Solomon's signet ring, telling him that it will be through this ring that his father will recognize him as the son of the woman he once loved. Many scholars have questioned whether Solomon ever met the son born from his single night of passion with the Queen of Sheba. Others believe that Menelik did, in fact, reach Jerusalem. It has been said that years later, when Menelik leaves Jerusalem to return to Ethiopia, he takes with him the sacred Ark of the Covenant. To this day, some people claim the Ark is kept in a remote temple in Ethiopia's holy city of Aksum. However, many experts remain unconvinced. They believe it far more likely that the Ark disappeared as late as the fall of Jerusalem to the Babylonians, 400 years after the death of Solomon. Some speculate that the Ark may have been destroyed by a conquering army and melted down for its gold. Others, however, believe it may still be intact.
The Ark is definitely buried somewhere, and according to most traditional sources, it's actually buried somewhere in Jerusalem.
Even today, explorers believe that the Ark is buried and continue to search for its whereabouts. What does seem certain is that King Solomon does not end his life a happy or fulfilled man. Scholars have wondered, was it because he allowed the one woman he might have loved to slip through his fingers?
One can imagine Solomon standing on the roof of his palace, watching Sheba's caravan disappear over the sands as he thinks about the one who got away.
It is after his liaison with the Queen of Sheba that Solomon is believed to have written Ecclesiastes, a book in the Bible characterized by its haunting lament.
To everything there is a season, a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck that which is planted. Ecclesiastes 3:2.
It seems to me that the book of Ecclesiastes represents all of us in our moments of bitterness, in our moments of wondering if all of life is just vanity. The message seems to be, even in our darkest moments, even in our bitterest thoughts about where is God, the assurance is, no, God is still with you.
Strangely, in his last days, a figure enters Solomon's life who has never before been mentioned in the Bible. It is Rehoboam, a son from one of Solomon's many wives. All that history tells us is that Solomon names him his successor to the throne. Solomon spends his last days alone in the magnificent palace he built for himself. His reign was marked by 40 years of peace and tranquility. Why is it then that shortly after Solomon's death, the United Kingdom of Israel is rocked by political turmoil?
10 of the traditional 12 tribes pull away from the house of David. This isn't a division of the kingdoms, as we so nicely say. This is a mass rejection of the house of Solomon. This is a mass rebellion amongst the majority of the people, rejecting lock, stock, and barrel the rulership of Solomon.
Some scholars hold Solomon personally responsible for the breakup of the 12 tribes of Israel.
He became enamored of his own power and his own reach and his own possibilities and potential, and in the end, he forgot that he was a fallible human being, that he was accountable primarily to God and to the people, and so he left a legacy that did great harm to Israel.
The tragedy of King Solomon strikes a universal and haunting chord. Perhaps no other human being has been blessed with such a deep and abiding wisdom. By relying on this divine insight, Solomon managed to build Israel into a mighty nation that awed the ancient world for a generation. And yet, somehow he lost his way. Caught up in all of his worldly accomplishments, Solomon lost sight of the needs of the common man. The shining promise of his youth was never realized. Wisdom without compassion can be a dangerous tool. In his hunger for greatness, Solomon was to abuse his God-given gift and see it turn with disastrous effect against not only his own people, but also against himself.